One of the biggest mistakes people make these days is to use the phrase with your friends or family, do what makes you happy. I'm 60 years old. I can't believe I'm saying that. It's like an old lady age. Yes, I know my grandchildren remind me I'm an old lady all the time. But I don't act old, they did say. So putting that aside, I am looking for the wisdom of God. And I suppose now he's poured a little bit of it into me. And he reminds me that back when I was growing up in the 60s and 70s, well, I technically feel like I grew up in the 80s because that's when I graduated. But I always remember hearing the phrase, if it feels good, do it. And as I've matured, I've heard way more often than I should, do what makes you happy. Um, what does your heart say? Go with your heart. And all those things are faulty. Because in the 60s, when all of this turmoil happened in the world, those who've been following the church in the world realize that the 60s was a massive turning point from goodness to evil. And I could do other videos about that. But basically, that if it feels good, do it phrase really started helping humans change to a truth focused life to a feeling focused life, from a life based on biblical logic or even truth planted in our hearts to just go with what your feelings are. So I do need to remind you that nowhere in the Bible does it ever say, nowhere, Old Testament, New Testament, nowhere does it say, do what makes you happy. But what it does say is, I'm going to point you towards God. And if you delight in me, then I will give you the delights of your heart, which, of course, if I have the delights of my heart, that is going to make me happy. Here in Psalm 37, verse 4, it says, find your delight in the Lord who will give you your heart's desire. I know what the desires of my heart are. And that means my daddy, my Father in heaven, who is going to be so happy to give me those things, of course, if they're in line with him. But that's where I should seek my happiness from. It says the Bible always links happiness to following the commandments. If you do what God wants you to do, that's where you're going to find your happiness. So following him, Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life. What does he teach us about the way? What does he teach us about truth? What does he teach us about life? Everything he points to is about selflessness and not selfishness. And so real quick lesson, don't turn this off. It's going to sound scientific. It's not. But there has actually been research done on happiness. And I've said this in a few videos before, but we always are looking for material things, the drugs, the sex, the 60s, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, right? Let's go after these things to be happy. You weren't. But we are always looking for external pleasures. And the field of positive psychology, which is really a field that studies happiness, has found when we go, there's two types, right? When we go over the physical, the types of the hedonistic happiness, right? They call it hedonic, but it's basically an external happiness that follows the feelings of the flesh. It's basically where we get all of our addictions from, pornography and drugs and alcohol and money, our addictions to money or food. Go after those external things, take more and more and more of it, and the happier you'll be, which research has found you're less and less happy because you need more and more and more of those things, and the less and less happier that you are. I don't need to go into that too much, but they've studied that and found that that's an external pleasure that relies on the external world. But they have studied humans for quite some time, and actually this field did start in the late 60s. And it found that the true source of happiness, which lines up with the Bible, is eudaimonic happiness, eudaimonia, together meaning fulfilled spirit, the good life, or not the good life, especially the fulfilled spirit. And it has found it's actually the opposite. It's an internal thing. Here's where science and the Bible are merging. That true happiness comes when you give it away to others, when you do for others, when you selflessly put others before the self. Any of you that have paid for someone at a drive-through when they didn't even know that it was you that was paying for it. Any of you that has given money to someone who needed it. You're giving away your stuff, but you're giving it to someone who needs it. That actually produces great happiness, which of course we know lines up with the Bible. So if you want to go watch some of those videos on the hedonic versus eudaimonic pleasures, it always says that's the giving that brings true scientific, it's been studied, happiness, peace, long-term, which lines up more with what we call joy. And whenever you look at science, if it's good science, it always lines up with the Bible, which is what Jesus says. Follow me, give, put yourself out there for others. Even this idea of suffering, because specifically in the Catholic Church, specifically, we talk about suffering as it benefits others. I can take my suffering and offer it up for the good of the soul of my prodigal child or my prodigal spouse or a soul in purgatory or anyone that currently needs that because they don't know how to suffer for themselves, or perhaps they're still going after happiness in these ungodly ways. So do not ever tell someone, do what makes you happy. Because if you tell that to a drug addict, they're going to stick a needle in their arm. Do what makes you happy. If you tell that to someone addicted to porn, they're going to turn on that screen. If you tell that to someone addicted to food, they're going to have that third Big Mac. That is not godly. That is not biblical. And that will pull someone away from the truth. Speak truth to those people and say, don't go after what makes you feel happy. Go after that which God says is good and holy. And in that, you will not only find happiness, but you will find joy. It's something, as we all know, that's deeper. It's something you can't really explain, but it covers you with this great sense of peace. Because even when you're walking through storms and your joy is in the Lord, for some reason, it doesn't grieve you like it would if you didn't know the Lord, if you didn't see the good in it, if you didn't know that God was going to produce fruit out of your suffering. So seek the joyful heart and fill your heart with joy by following the commands of the Lord. And in that, you will truly find your happiness. I hope this helps. I'd love to hear your comments. What are your thoughts on this? Have you said this to people before? Have they said it to you? Have you found that it's not true to say, do what makes you happy? Are you agreeing with me, or are you going, you know what? Never really thought about that. If you like this, like, subscribe, share with your friends and family. They may need to hear it too. And as always, if you have a few extra dollars, click on the link below and help support my channel. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks for watching this Bacon Bit. And as always, remember to live your life sunny side up.